Now, ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've all been waiting for. Who I'm about to present to you is not the hero that we want, it's the hero that we need. Here in Philadelphia, there are a lot of issues, and to be able to have someone that you can physically touch or listen to and speak to about some more of, especially with real estate and taxes. We have David O today. He's a prominent figure for anyone that's in real estate because he deals with a lot of things that are going to have to deal with our income, right? So today we want to introduce mayoral candidate, former prosecutor, the member of the board. He's on boards of multiple organizations. It's really that guy, right? So we want to introduce David O today, right? Let's put our hands together for David.
All right, thank you very much.
Here you go, David. I'll clip this right on here so you don't got to worry about sound. Just worry about.
All right, thank you very much. I think I'm in the right spot.
Yep.
So, good morning, everybody. What I'm going to do is not always look at the camera because it's hard for me to talk to a camera, but I will talk to folks. What I'm going to do is really just talk about some issues. Consider it voter education. I'm not trying to convince you to vote for me. I'm just going to talk about some issues, give you perspective. Some of them you'll like, some of them you'll hate. If you don't like my perspectives, don't vote for me. Go find somebody else. It's not a problem. But I do think there's value in listening to the issues so that when you hear from other people, especially those that you like the sound of what they're saying, you have to kind of get down to how they're actually going to do it. So I'm just going to start with a few things and then open it up for questions. The most obvious problem in our city for you and for me and everyone is violent crime, murders and things like that. It's debilitating in so many ways, but most directly it impacts the people in the communities and neighborhoods that feel that violence in a very, very personal way. They can't get out of the city. If they could, they would. They are trying to get out. They're trying to get out of their house. They're trying to get out of their neighborhood. They can't get the help from the city or the district attorney's office, and I think that's an atrocious problem. I identified 9 mothers who are getting shot at, literally shot at, over 2 years, because today's criminal is a 14-year-old who's trying to kill her son, and when they can't find the son, they start shooting at the mother, the little brother, and the little sister. This is where we've ended up. It's a mystery, right? Because everyone in the neighborhood knows this group of kids getting in a white car and a black car, driving around, and we can't stop them. We can't send a drone to watch them. We can't identify them with police officers. You know, it's a mystery, right? Why is this so hard? And people in the community wonder why this is so hard. Why can't we just identify these killers and get them off the streets? What they believe is this: because we don't matter. Any way you cut it, and I don't care who says what, the bottom line is this: we don't matter. You don't care. You don't send the police here, along with our schools, where kids get shot, where kids get bullied, and the bullies stay in the school, and our kids have to go out and try to get online learning, where when we do a little something in our community, you're taking the kids out of our house and putting them in foster care. And for those who don't know about that, you'll learn more about it. But it's been going on in this city. This city removes children from families, overwhelmingly poor black families, at a rate 3 times higher than New York City and 4 times higher than Chicago. It's inexcusable because the allegations are anonymous. The oftentimes single mother or grandmother doesn't know what the allegations are. And even when they are proven to be unfounded, in comes Department of Human Services, removing 3 children, separating them where now they're subject to physical and sexual abuse. One of the problems with government is it measures other people. Like, it'll measure a charter school, but those measurements don't apply to a public school. It'll measure how you treat your children, but once the children are under DHS control, it doesn't measure itself. And that is a huge problem. That's a inexcusable problem. Crime is developed in many, many ways. We didn't get here overnight, but there are new things. There's new technologies, there's social media, every kid's got a cell phone, there are ghost guns, kids now running around with semi-automatics with extended magazines. I could go online and get a drum A drum is a round clip that goes in the bottom of my 9mm, and it has 50 rounds. So we're not really talking about like, AR-15s anymore. We're talking about young people with semi-automatic weapons with multiple rounds out to shoot people for almost no reason at all. That has to be stopped immediately. Now, the problem is, how do you stop that? Well, there's one way I would say that you could stop that. You focus on those particular people. There are not that many of them. We focus on the neighborhoods that they terrorize. There's not that many of them. And you put visible uniformed police out there who work with the community. There's a couple things that have to happen first. First, this city cannot be a city with a reputation for hating police. It can't have a government that hates police. It cannot have a government that does not support, equip, and provide resources to police. It cannot underpay police. It has to provide the condition and circumstances where the officers feel safe, they feel that they're appreciated, and the first thing we do is we send them where people want them. We do not need to send them where people don't want them. We have to begin that process. And if they do a good job, and I believe they will, of working with the community, being visible, being trained to interact in a friendly, intelligent, law-abiding manner with sensitivity, because they're peace officers, officers of enforcing laws that help us all interact and live together. Under those circumstances, I believe that we will be able to show the other communities fraught with violent crime that this does work. I'll just give a quick example of something that stands out in my mind. I went to 33rd and Diamond after a number of women left a club. You might have read about in the paper. Apparently, somehow they said no to some men. I don't know what happened. They got in their cars, but at 33rd and Diamond, a couple of cars pulled out and men jumped out and fired their weapons into the cars of the women. Now, isn't that frightening? You say no to some guy, next thing you know, they jump out to follow you and shoot 2 cars full of ladies. That is unheard of, right? A few years ago, that would not be any kind of behavior that any criminal would do in this city. We've had violent crime in this city for a long time. When I was a kid, we had gang wars. But you know what? Even during gang wars, people did not shoot at each other's mothers or little brothers. We are at an entirely different cultural perspective right now. But I went there the next day, and to my surprise, there was no yellow tape, there was no police car, there was no nothing. It's a bright, sunny, beautiful day, like nothing happened. Now, one person will say, if we send police, we're telling people that we're being harsh on the community, that we're not sensitive to civil rights and racial issues. That's a perspective. When I look at it, it says to me, this city doesn't care. It doesn't care that 3 or 4 women were shot. It doesn't care that men just jumped out their car and opened fire. It doesn't look like anything happened. And everyone in that neighborhood knows that when somebody else gets shot, who's not from that neighborhood, the perpetrators are found quickly, the news is all over the place. It reinforces this one thing in our city that has led to so many problems. We don't matter. And if you keep telling children in particular that you don't matter, you don't have a future, nobody's for you, everything's against you, you are reinforcing to them that very idea. Because on social media, they can see. They look at their school, and they can see another school. They can see it. They know the difference. I have 4 kids. I cannot give one kid a fantabulous birthday present, and the other 3 kids, nothing. That's not good for the kid who gets that wonderful present. It's bad for them. It's bad because of the turmoil and envy and jealousy and strife it creates. By law, we must provide a level of equity. I'm really about equal opportunity, but there are things that must be equitable, such as the school building, the curriculum, the resources. Why does one school have an orchestra and the other schools don't? Why does one school have 3D printers on every floor and most all schools don't? Why does one school have a fantabulous library? Other schools, the library is closed. They don't even use them for library. Count. Nobody cares about me. I have no future, as I'm being told. Everything's stacked against me, and I'm not going to live long. And they are going out purposefully. So what do we hear on the street? They're coming out to good neighborhoods. They're coming up to Mount Airy. They're going to Chestnut Hill. They're going to, Rittenhouse Square. They're going to go out in a way where they're going to let you know that they're here. They're not concerned about the poor neighborhood that they live in. They already own that. They're going out to wealthy neighborhoods, isolated neighborhoods. They want to make their statement. ATVs and dirt bikes are part of that. It's not a thing to be taken lightly. And whenever someone watches on the news, donuts around police cars, you have a whole lot of young people being encouraged to make bad decisions. Now whose fault is that? That's our fault. We should not be encouraging young people who have enough hardships in their life to be making bad decisions. Are there things we can do about it? Yes, there are. I'm going to skip over that because that's a long topic. Let me just touch on a part of the topic that has to do with you. Obviously, if people don't want to live in this city, if they don't want to buy a house in this city, if they can't leave their house, those are all problems. Even in the best parts of this city nowadays, I talk to people who live in the nicest parts of the town. They said, I don't want my wife to go out at night. My son-in-law said, I don't want your daughter shopping or walking around Center City. That's going to affect your business, but your business affects our city. It's a telltale sign of what is happening. The public transportation system. Somebody in SEPTA decided that they were going to win some social services award and turn the subway into a shelter. It's a horrible idea. They're out getting awards all over the place because the people giving them awards don't live here. They don't have to use that. Now, there are people who don't need to ride the subway. Yeah, it costs more to take an Uber, but there are people who cannot get anywhere without public transportation, and they are stuck on it. There was a knife slashing yesterday, a crowded vehicle, people screaming. There's been shootings in the public transportation system, on the platforms, on the bus, on the train, the very famous rape case that occurred, and many other types of things. Part of it is that the subway system and public transportation is that it is a public transportation system. It is not a shelter, not built to be a shelter. You have people defecating in there, having sex in there, doing drugs in there. They feel like they have the right to smoke whatever they're smoking down there. It's completely unacceptable. And the fact that there's no law enforcement is sending a very wrong message to people who should not be encouraged to ruin their lives. We should not be making it easy for them to ruin their lives. It's just a terrible thing to do. Squatters. I did a bill against squatters. And I had all kinds of people, just really criticizing me for being inhumane, uncaring, and things like that. What does my bill say? If you own a home as your primary residence, you go to the hospital for 6 months, you come back, there's 5 people living in your house. I'm only laughing because I find this beyond ridiculous. There's 5 people in your house with 2 pit bulls. Your clothes, your jewelry, your bank account, your artifacts, your family photographs, everything's in your house. You pay your taxes, you got insurance, you got documents that it's your house. And you call the police, because that's your first reaction, right? Call the police, somebody's in my house. They knock on the door and someone says, oh, I'm renting this house. How so? Well, I went on Craigslist. You know the story better than I do, right? I went on Craigslist. This guy said, meet me at the gas station, give me $2,300 in cash. I don't have a lease. I don't have his number. I don't have anything. Oh, how's he pick up the rent? I don't know. He's supposed to come. I got this letter here addressed to me, which means nothing, by the way. And the police come back and say, listen, I'm sorry, you have to go to landlord-tenant court, which, as you know, is the wrong court to go to in the first place, right? Well, can I get, no. If you come back here, you'll be arrested. Don't bother these people. Now, who are these people? Well, from what we've seen, many of them have jobs. Many of them are employed. We had one who was working at the school district, and she lives right next to the house that she was squatting in. We went to visit the house, nice big house. They took out this old lady, about 78 years old, poor as can be, had one investment property. She sold two other not very good condition homes, bought all new fixtures, kitchenette. They took all that stuff, they stole it and trashed her house. Now, she's asking me, what can be done? Like, do people find that shocking? I do. It's a burglary, it's criminal trespass, it's theft. It's like right out in the open. We've even had people who were on videotape talking the news when they were confronted with the fact that after they broke in the house, like kicked the door in, the couple who came back from vacation, a young couple, they were told by the police, you cannot enter, because that's how the police are being trained. Am I blaming the police? I am not. I'm blaming the city for training officers to do that. Well, the people partying in the house, they went to Florida on vacation. And when confronted with the fact that they're like, well, I didn't go by myself. I took all my friends with me. We're down in Florida. See, they can leave the house and go on vacation for 2 weeks, but you cannot get back in your house. So what did I do? I simply did this. If there is signs of criminality, you report it to the police. You're supposed to get a response in so many days, and there has to be a written thing. We are going to investigate or we are not. If they are not going to, you take that down to the court system, you show that you filed it, and you get an emergency hearing within 30 days. It's really like 10 days, but we give time for extensions and other things, but within 30 days, you'll be in front of a judge. So that whoever is there saying, I am renting this house, can tell it to the judge. That in of itself will stop this problem because they know, cash for keys, right? They know they'll be there 7 to 11 months for sure. And so if you want those keys, $5,000. And sometimes people have been told like, no, I'm sorry, 5,000 is not enough. You can't turn off the utilities, by the way. It's against the law. So they will be using your electricity, running the water, watching your television, drinking your wine, whatever they're doing in your bathrobe, and just walking around like nothing happened. Now again, that is shocking to me. And it's not that there aren't laws, they're just not being enforced because, again, some kind-hearted person figured that we are addressing homelessness when we let people live in your house. Now, where are you supposed to go? Because these are obviously not rich homes. These are poor people or low-income people, or at least, they are people who are not able to fight back. By the way, this doesn't happen in North Philly. Because in North Philly, if you do that to somebody, you might end up very hurt. This happens in neighborhoods, they selected neighborhoods where people are basically law-abiding, or they're seniors, or they're vulnerable, or they're like the single mother or something like that. They're not breaking into some tough guy's house. They're not doing that. They're very smart about who they go. If you obey the law, if you try to follow the law, if you're an educated person, if you have a job, you could be a victim, right? That's what happens, or if you're just vulnerable. So my bill passed, the mayor signed it, and then within 2 months, another council person introduced a bill to thwart my bill and basically took out the ability to get in front of a judge in 30 days, and it's no good anymore. And I tell people, do not ever use that law, because on top of everything else that kind of removed the effectiveness of that bill, they also added the right to private lawsuit. So if you try to use that bill, they have a right to get a lawyer to sue you, and the lawyer can sue for attorney's fees. So they don't have to pay for that lawyer either. Now isn't that so bizarre? I think it is. I'm going to get off of crime for a minute after making one last statement. All of these things are very difficult to turn around. Think about it. How long does it take to change education? If you started today with a new fantastic education system, it's too late for the 12th grader, the 11th grader. It's too late for the person who dropped out of 9th grade. You would be starting somewhere in elementary school. How many years before you turn around a society and a culture that believes school doesn't matter and there's nothing in it for them and that it's miserable to go to school and kind of pointless? It would take years and years to turn that around. How will you turn around Kensington Avenue? How will you turn around the violence in our neighborhoods? Well, I will say this. You have to telegraph a communication. You have to let people know there is a dramatic change that's happened. And that's where we run into the problem of politics. Because people are looking for perfect solutions. There are no perfect solutions, not for everybody concerned. If I live on Kensington Avenue and my kids can't walk out the house without being subject to shootings, drug-addicted people, sexual acts in front of them, step over human defecation. If I can't have my kids, when you clean that place up, it's a perfect solution for me. But who's thinking about me? Who's thinking about me living in that street, on that block with my kids in the conditions that I've been subject to? Like, why am I subject to those conditions? Am I not a U.S. citizen? Do I not count in this country? Am I not a resident? Like, why do I have to live with open air drug dealers who openly tell you, don't come out the house next week because we're going to have a shootout on this block? Openly. It's not tolerable. There should be no place called Kensington Avenue. What it is a magnet of misery. The place should not exist. Why? People are very focused on the individual. Yeah, they count too. I'm not saying they don't, but it's worse to leave them there living in tents on the sidewalk. It's worse. Look at their health. Look at their mental condition. It's worse to not enforce the law. It's less humane. If you enforce the law, it's more humane. Why? Because you shut down this place called Kensington Avenue. There are people in Chester County who used to come to Philadelphia for 6 months, hit rock bottom, and go back home for 2 years. Live the life, clean up, look like anybody else, have a setback, be back on Kensington Avenue for 4 months. Now they're here for 6 years. 6 years with no intervention. Their mental state has completely changed. Their physical and emotional health. How do they get $140 a day? Cash. You know and I know. And the younger you are, the more money you'll make. 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, that's all organized there. There should be no place like that. Because someone who cannot make good decisions, rather than staying in Chester County with a loving family or a support network, a government that provides beds and treatment, they just want to get to Kensington Avenue where they can just get their drugs because the police are told not to intervene, not to even talk with the drug addicted, as in this. Have you called your mother? Can I give you a phone? Would you call your mom and dad? The advocates don't want that. Why make them feel guilty? The police are told not to intervene with the drug dealers. Why not? Because drug addicted people need drugs. They want to have a drug dealer on every corner that you can walk up to and get your drugs from. But these drug dealers are making so much money, they're murdering each other. Does anybody care about them? I don't think so. Why don't they count? According to the Mexican government, the last time I looked at the statistics, I think it was 2017 or 18,000 people were murdered in relation to the heroin trade. It's not a victimless crime, not at all. And the stats are unreliable. Someone is high, get hit by a truck. Someone is high, gets murdered while they're prostituting. Someone is high, they die. Those stats aren't kept. They're not accurate stats at all. It's a sales pitch. You can find, as I have found, all the conflicting data in Canada or any place else. Most people who don't want the heroin injection sites, they are not, as the media says, like heartless people who are stereotyping drug addicts. They are former drug addicted people and surviving family members. They do not want it there because it is a tremendous temptation for those living day to day trying to avoid addiction. They don't want it anywhere near them, and they know exactly what comes with it. Anyway, I'm just going to say that the best thing we can do is take very clear, forceful action and telegraph it to save everyone the misery of Kensington Avenue is shut down. Drones go by, you sell, we record you, we arrest you, you go to jail, where your life will be saved. Drug addicted people, we pick you up, we put you to detox, we put you where you need to be, mental health, whatever services you need. But you will not live on the streets. You will not defecate on the streets. You will not prostitute on the streets. You will not steal on the streets. You'll do none of that. The city is like a kind-hearted person who took in 2 stray cats and then one day decided to take in 200 stray cats. You can't do it. You are the cause of misery. It is beyond our ability. It is not a good service at all. And for the city to say, we cannot pick up anyone on the street unless we have a residence for them. We don't have residence for them, and we never will. That's a complete fabrication. Do you know how much that would cost to build housing and apartments and all that? It's ridiculous. But that's merely said to try to keep people who have a good heart and not a lot of desire to look into the facts, a good feeling. Oh, we're taking care of them, they're living free, they're going to put them in a house, they're going to give them a kitchen. No, none of that stuff is true. Without very clear message, when an ATV comes crossing in the Philadelphia border, it is stopped, it is confiscated, and it is destroyed. And then you let everybody know, don't bother coming here. Don't come here. And people say to me, like, how can you say they have illegal weapons? Well, one, because they let you see it. There isn't a group of 200 people riding illegal vehicles in the streets of Philadelphia rolling in here unarmed. And they're letting you know they have it. Some of them are probably legal weapons as well. But do you want to be in the middle of that? It's intimidating and it's problematic. And they're going to run into conflicts. It's simple as this. You're not allowed to do it. Every criminal law, every public safety law shall be enforced. Now, on the other side, we have to properly train our officers. If there are officers who do bad things, they should be fired, they should be disciplined, yeah, they should be prosecuted. That's not a problem. But if officers are doing what they're trained to do, and what they've been trained to do is to violate your rights, that's the city's fault. The city acts like the police department is somehow like not connected to the city. It is. Those are city employees. We are responsible for them. The same as you are. You train your staff incorrectly. They do what you train them to do. You can't fire them. You train them to do it that way. I'm getting the open for questions. Okay. Well, I'm going to stop now. We could talk about schools and quality of life and all that stuff, but I'll leave it to your questions. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So, any questions?
I got one.
Yeah.
What authority does the mayor office have over the district attorney office?
None.
That's
Yeah, kind of the issue, because it comes up, people ask me about the district attorney's office, and this is what I would say. I disagree with the district attorney on policy and practice. I say it publicly, I've said it privately to him. There's 2 things that I think people really care about. 1 is violent crime, 2 is quality of life. There's a bunch of other crimes they're not really that interested in. But what affects them is little things that get them into personal conflict. And those conflicts can escalate. And then it's a decision of what am I going to do? I'm going to ask you a question you don't have to answer. Has anyone thought about buying a gun? You know what? We have a tremendous increase in legal gun ownership. The number one group of people who do not want to own a gun, they hate guns, are black women. The number one group of people buying guns are black women. What does that tell you? The people who hate guns the most are buying guns the most. They don't feel protected. They don't feel safe. They don't feel like they can rely on the police, the city. They got to take matters into their own hands. They don't want to do it because they got kids. They got all kinds of consequences. But it's a rock and a hard place, right? There's a lot of like peace-loving people that they're really against guns, just under the idea of it. They don't want to shoot anybody. They're thinking about buying guns, believe me, they are. We typically have 11,000 applications for carry permits. In the last couple of years, it's 75,000 a year. For every legal gun owner, there is an illegal gun owner, right? Because some people are not allowed to own guns. That don't mean they're safe, you know? What do you say? Better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6? They're saying like, listen, I live in this bad neighborhood. I got these young guys out there, 15 years old, ready to pop me off. I'm going to have access to a weapon. I'm going to carry a weapon. If I go to jail, I go to jail, but it's better than being shot 12 times. This is what happens when you don't enforce the law. People take matters into their own hands. That's going to happen. And we are a powder keg, you know, like that. So I've said that to Larry Krasner. I've said it to him directly. He's not a believer in that. And I'm not having a harsh argument with him. I'm just saying, look, man, little things like retail theft. Somebody walks in, takes $300 off of items off the shelf and starts walking out. There's someone behind the counter. What is she going to do? Well, she's told don't do anything. People just walk in, take the stuff out. Walk in, take the stuff out. Okay. But that business is going to stay open. It's going to close. And when it closes, it's a tremendous inconvenience to the people in that neighborhood. Tremendous inconvenience. They can't just hop in their car and drive over the border and go to like some supermarket or something. That's it. Other than that, they got to take public transportation, which they don't want to do, and it costs, right? But he don't believe in a broken window theory. So he believes this is like an innovative and astute way to not criminalize conduct.
It's working well.
What's that?
I said it's working well.
Yeah, it's not working at all, right? The problem is he's dug his heels in. Like, listen, I think humility is a really important thing. Larry Krasner was elected. He's legit. He said, I'm going to do this, and he did it. And he got reelected. That's the consequence of democracy, right? If you don't vote, you get what other people voted for. And I'm just going to say this. So one, there's not much the mayor can do with Larry Krasner. What the mayor needs to do is deal with his own employees. The problem with this mayor is he's telling police officers don't chase, don't pursue, don't arrest, don't interact, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, and don't enforce the laws. Well, if I were a police officer, I'd be awfully confused. What can I do? What can I do? The law said do this, but the city said don't do it. And it's kind of vague. Am I supposed to have x-ray vision, look into the car before I stop it? The neighborhood? Like, what am I supposed to do exactly? And the problem is the police are so demoralized that it's not a far trip for them to say, you know what? I'm not answering the call. That is police abuse. That's police abuse. To violate your rights is police abuse. To refuse to answer the call for help is police abuse. Either way. What we've ended up with people who don't answer the call. So you call and nobody's coming. And that's wrong. And that's a problem. And this mayor needs to fix it. Even before we get there, anyone call 911 and nobody picks up? Because they do in my neighborhood. Call and call and call 911. Nobody answers the phone. You got to keep trying, maybe 45 minutes later. Is that excusable? It's absolutely inexcusable. When you are looking at someone on the floor dying, when someone broke in your house, you're calling 911, like in the movies. Help. Nobody's answering. That can be taken care of, and it will. Larry Krasner has to be worked around, and because he's elected. He's elected. But you can work around Larry Krasner, I would, but I don't disrespect elected officials. I don't agree with them, I might fight with them, I'll do things to work around what Larry Krasner does. But this mayor is also guilty of not enforcing the law and really reducing the morale of his police force. Many of them looking to get out of here. Same with the transit police, same with the the university police and everybody else. It is, you don't have to do these policy decisions. All you have to do is feel safe getting on the bus or the subway system. All you have to do is walk into a fresh, clean smelling, safe, litter-free, a subway system, a bus or something. That's all you need to do. You need to walk out of your house without having to say, could you get off my steps, and not worry about someone like pulling a knife on you. That's all you have to do. You have to just be able to walk out at night and enjoy your community, no matter how rich or poor. That's a quality of life issue. But if you can't step out your house, if you got to check your back door and your windows just before you go to sleep, I got to get up, walk downstairs, make sure that's locked. That's not a thing that should be happening in any neighborhood. What could I do? Enforce the law, make sure we have the facilities, make sure that the police are equipped and properly doing their jobs. And in my opinion, the law department can handle certain prosecutions. One, they can be deputized by the Attorney General's office. Number two, we can bring attorney generals, assistant attorney generals here for certain types of crimes. I can supplement temporarily with state police until we get, I'm not for the National Guard, by the way. That's a completely different function. That's terrible to put that burden on them. But law enforcement, yeah, we can do that. But number one, they have to know they're backed and welcomed and properly supported. Yes?
Good morning, sir. So I have a two-part question.
Yep.
So what plan did you have to institute in the school system to make it all equal?
Yep.
And then the second part would be, in a lot of these communities where the crime is high, a lot of the crimes come from kids that are in single-family households or single-parent households, specifically single-mother households, and the crime is exponentially higher in those households. And I feel like the lack of positive male role models is the reason why the crime continues to grow. Right. And the thing is, these kids who are 14 in gangs don't really have a choice. They have to provide or they have to survive. So, and also, after people get out of jail, the odds of them committing another violent crime are even exponentially higher as well. So, I wanted to see what your opinion was on having positive male role models in community and why you think putting people in jail versus that system will work.
Well, because getting positive role models will take us years, and murder will happen tonight and tomorrow. So the first thing to do is stop the murder, and that's something we can easily do. To begin stopping murders, to begin to tell kids and adults these things are not acceptable anymore. To tell drug dealers and to tell vindictive young people, you won't roll around this neighborhood like that anymore. That could be done right away. But the issue that you're talking about is, like, what is the bright future? In other words, what is the change in mindset that says, hey, listen, I don't have a dismal end to my life. I have a bright future ahead of me, and there's things that are for me, not for somebody else. Well, as you said, look, let's start with schools, right? We have poor neighborhoods, we have dysfunctional families. That's not going to change overnight. One of the things that we can do is the public services that are provided. The first thing we can do is we can provide a good education in a school. It's actually not hard. not hard at all. And let me just explain why. A school is like a post office. You go to any part of the city, rich or poor, the post office is the same post office, right? Looks the same, walk in, mail a letter, get a money order, whatever you want to do. Poor, rich, it's all the same. You walk into school, depending on what neighbor you are in, they are tremendously different. Like, the disparity is shocking, right? For those who don't know, there's bathrooms that don't work. There's no toilet paper. You can't drink the water. It's horrifically unequal. But it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it's been that way for decades. I could name the schools. You'll know the neighborhoods. The schools are just bad, right? They've always been bad. So how come they've not been fixed with all these smart, good-willed people, with all the money that we have? The federal government gave the school district $1.2 billion during the pandemic. Schools were closed. They saved about $50 million, I think, over that short time from the beginning of the pandemic until like the time that we were $52 million. It's online learning, right? So what I would say is this. The first problem is the school board. The school board in Philadelphia is appointed by the mayor. If the mayor appoints 9 great people, you will have a great school board. The mayor appoints amateurs playing with education, don't know what they're doing, focused on all kinds of things other than education, you get a bad school district. They start opening the schools, when it's too hot with no air conditioning. Now they're going to go back. They're just goofing around. That's the mayor's fault. What I would do, and I introduced a bill to do this, there's only been 2 bills in the last, 15 years that had to do with governance reform in the school district. Both of them were introduced by me. Is that shocking with all the talk of education? There isn't another council member who's introduced a bill on reforming school governance. School governance is critical to reforming school education. I did a bill based on best practices. Best practices based on successful school districts throughout the country and the world that are not based on simply rich. Rich always works, right? Because it's self-secluding, it's self-isolating. Lower Merion's median household income, $334,000 per household? Philadelphia, about $40,000. In a system based on property tax, Lower Merion's going to do great, smaller school district. The problem with education in Pennsylvania and disparity in education is really about rural Pennsylvania. It's not really about Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the largest school district. It is 10 times larger than the next largest school district. But money is not our primary problem. It is the efficiency and effectiveness of those dollars. So what happens is we have a school board that the mayor appoints that you could talk to for 2 minutes, and that's it. They're not responsive. They're not exercising board functions. What is a board function? A board function is an arm's distance oversight of the day-to-day operation of the entity. So, school board members appointed by the mayor, they have an office in the school administration building, and they sit in there doing what? They're unpaid, but they're paid.